Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I am in one of my favorite places on the planet, which is the West Point Preserve, and I'm here to talk to you about mangrove forests and why they're so important, not just to the environment, to our bottom line. And the way this video is going to go is first I'm going to go over a general tutorial of what mangrove forests or mangrove swamps are. Then we're going to talk about the benefits that they provide to us and everything else in the environment. And then lastly we're going to talk about the challenges. So let's do it. Mangrove swamps are semi-submerged saltwater ecosystems. So they're also tidal, which means that when the tide rises, the water rises along with it, and when it goes out, it goes back down. But generally, the soil will remain waterlogged throughout. There are three main types of mangroves. The first type is a red mangrove, which you can see right here. And these are typified by these big, sweeping, buttressing roots. And they hold the trunk in place, and they actually make it very, very hard to knock down a mangrove in a hurricane or other storms. But these play a very important role when it comes to protecting our shorelines. And this is a black mangrove, so they're found farther from the coast than red mangroves. The red mangroves populate basically the coastline and the more submerged areas. So black mangroves prefer slightly higher ground. They're not as resistant to saltwater intrusion. And the way you can tell them apart from the other types of mangroves is, one, they have a darker bark. It's also kind of a more, solid bark than the more papery bark of the white mangrove. And also, more importantly, they have these little things, these structures that look like fingers. They're called metaphors.
Metaphors.
And what they do is that they allow the tree to breathe when the salt water comes up. So they have little pores here that allow the air to come in and out. Also, another really cool thing is that, let's see here. So the leaves will kind of accumulate salt because the tree will extract the water directly from the ocean, drink the fresh water and extract the salt water, and then the salt itself will get excreted from the leaves. And the leaves actually are salty. And you know I'm gonna lick this leaf. It's a salty leaf. So this is a white mangrove, and you can tell it apart from the other two types because unlike the black mangrove, it doesn't have those metaphors, those finger-looking structures coming out of the ground. Also, it doesn't have any sweeping roots. It's just a straight trunk. However, you still can't tell that it is a mangrove. It's in the family by looking at the leaves. It's got a waxy coating on the leaves, and they're bright green, and that's how you can tell it apart. These are the least saltwater loving of all three mangroves found natively in South Florida. So you'll find them closer to higher ground than, say, the black or the red mangrove. The mangroves serve as a really important nursery for juvenile fish of all sorts of oceanic species. So what happens is that they lay their fish within the roots, and that protects them from larger predators. They grow up here, and then once they reach a certain size, they go back out into the ocean, and it is absolutely really important for their life cycles. So not just that, but also another really big benefit of mangrove swamps in relation to the environment is that they serve as rookeries. So you have tons of birds here: egrets, pelicans, laughing gulls, endangered and threatened species of all different kinds that nest here, again, for protection from predators, and also because you have the resource of all these fish, crabs as well, arthropods of all sorts. But yeah, this is absolutely critical for a healthy coastal ecosystem, way farther and what would seem unconnected to the actual mangroves. Most immediate protective benefit that mangroves provide to us and to everyone else really is that they absorb storm and hurricane surges. So, you know, you've got a hurricane coming offshore and you have this big storm surge, basically just a big block of water moving inland. If that water hits a solid stone structure like a seawall, all that kinetic energy from the water will be transferred onto that wall, and that wall will crack eventually. However, in a mangrove forest or mangrove swamp along the coast, you have a very soft soil / sandy soil that absorbs a lot of that. Plus, you have all these roots here, and every single one of these roots absorbs part of that storm surge, and that mangroves also serve a very, very important role when it comes to climate change. So, first of all, they take out a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, sequester it in their trunks and in their roots. Secondly, they hold down a whole lot of carbon in the soil itself. So if you take out all these mangroves, if you were to cut down absolutely everything here, then you'd have a whole lot of decomposing and decaying tree matter, vegetative matter underground that would then be exposed to the air. And all that carbon would be turned into carbon dioxide and would rise up and make the greenhouse effect even worse. The climate change is kind of like ultimately it is detrimental to mangroves, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword. So when you have the sea levels rise, what happens is that you have areas like the Everglades, which are fresh water, that they get salinated. So that destroys very sensitive habitat. Now the mangroves ring the Everglades along the ocean, and as the salt water rises, they actually migrate inland. The problem being that the mangroves along the coast then get drowned, because even though these are water-loving trees, you know, if you get to a certain height, they will die. So those trees closer to the coast will all die, and those are bigger, thicker trees that hold more carbon than the newer trees that are migrating back. So for instance, you've got little saplings like this that would be migrating inland, taking over the previous freshwater environment, and you've got big trees like this one, which have way more carbon stored in them, that would be dying, and it then releasing that carbon out into the atmosphere, making, once again, climate change even worse. The biggest threat to mangroves are humans, honestly. So for instance, we've introduced all sorts of different invasive species, like right around me. You've got these Australian pine from Australia, not native to South Florida or to the United States. And what they do is that, one, they crowd out all the native vegetation. So you'll notice that all you have here are more Australian pine. You don't have any white mangroves, you don't have any sea grape or all other higher elevation plants. Another thing that they do is that they drink up all of the fresh water. So again, that makes it more difficult for native plants to grow. And thirdly, these needles, when they fall, are actually slightly acidic. So they'll acidify the soil and make it, once more, very difficult for the native flora to thrive here. Like I said, humans are the greatest danger to mangroves. Sometimes assholes will come out here and just leave their crap all over the place. We've got water bottles, beer bottles, got a baseball, tennis ball, racquetball. You can play all manner of sports out here. And there's way worse than this out here. Earlier I saw some caulking. You'll find insulation, netting, all sorts of stuff. So a lot of it is brought in by the tides, but like this little pile right here, just assholes coming out here and polluting the environment. So like I said earlier, this is a tidal environment, so the tide will bring water in when it rises and it'll bring it out when it falls. But it doesn't just bring in water, it also brings in a whole lot of trash. Like, we are in the middle, literally like in the middle of nowhere. We are hundreds of meters away from the coastline, and yet this buoy for the fiber optic cable washed all the way in here, and you'll find stuff like this all over the place. So not only do you have pollution from people willfully coming out here and just dropping their crap, but you have stuff that washes in from the ocean all the time, especially after big storms. So here's another example of the trash that washes inland. These things are killers. So all these little holes here, you can get fish, turtles, birds trapped in there. So if you're ever gonna, first of all, if you're ever gonna throw these away, make sure you cut them up so that nothing gets trapped in there. Yeah, these are really bad. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please share and subscribe. And I want to give a shout out to my boy Tony. Tony, point the camera your way.
Hey.
I convinced him to come out here with me. We had a great time. He's my cameraman. But yeah, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you around next time.
It's Tony De La Rosa taking over the mangroves. I'm getting Andrew's back, catching some of these hilarious outtakes of him running into giant ass spider webs.
Actually, we're in a pretty. Oh god. Oh yeah, look at that. That was in my mouth.
See?
Yeah, actually, what I was saying is that we're in a pretty clear area. Ah, fuck. I spoke too soon.
Bro.
Right in the
That's
face.
why I have this freaking long ass stick.
If you ever want to come out to a mangrove swamp, heads up, you're gonna get spiders to the face all day.
Whoa! That one jumped at me. Get some action in here.
Literally where we're at right now.
I got like freaking weeds growing out of my crotch right now.